Om Sang Saraswati Namaha. Namaste. Namaste, everyone. Very, very happy to be back. And let us begin with the Kashyapa Sutra. It's in the book called Srima, the Guru and the Goddess. And we'll begin on page 6 with the introduction. The Saptarishis, the 7 primordial sages, are mysterious figures whose spiritual luminescence has fired the Hindu imagination for thousands of years. Said to have been born directly from the mind of God, these seers imparted the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal truth rooted in the divine essence of our being, to the earliest race of humanity. One of them, legend says, shone so brightly with inner light that his contemporaries called him a human sun. His name was Kashyapa. The Kashyapa Sutras offer us a glimpse of the immense wisdom of this ancient saint. They also reveal his humanity, for, like teachers today, he kept class notes, a syllabus of topics he intended to cover in his lecture. These sutras represent the quintessence of the insights he would elaborate as he sat down to teach his eager students. Fortunately, in our own darker era, saints of similar wisdom and spiritual equipoise are still among us. At the Devi Mandir in Northern California, Srima quietly guides sincere disciples to their own inner sun. She teaches practices current in her native Assam, where she herself wandered for years lost in God. Ritual worship, chanting of sacred hymns and mantras, selfless service, and devotion to the Mother of the Universe. This is not a beginner's course. Srima is working with students who are already devoting 2 or 3 hours daily to spiritual practice and are striving to increase their level of concentration till they can worship and meditate for 8 or 9 hours every day. As those who have visited the mandir know, Srima usually says very little. Her tranquil luminosity puts an end to the necessity for words. But sometimes, she sometimes joins with Swami Satyananda as they playfully engage us in the realm of questions and answers, broadening and clarifying our understanding of the ancient tradition he and Ma represent. In a series of delightful evening talks, they help us wade into an eddy in the vast flood of Kashyap's divine knowledge. As Swami explains the inner significance of Kashyap's ancient sutras, Srima listens intently, interrupting from time to time to eliminate a point. When we students find ourselves veering too sharply toward the dry bank of mere intellectual understanding, sometimes she spontaneously breaks into song, intensifying the atmosphere of devotion. Unobtrusively, Parvati, a most humble and serviceful devotee, records the talks and takes notes. From the sacrificial fire of Swamiji's words, Parvati's transcription, and Ma's illuminated awareness, this book takes form and shines as an offering to the force of enlightened awareness in us all. There are 15 verses propounded by Maharshi Kashyapa, which are known as the Kashyapa Sutras, which describe the concept of enlightenment and the path to its attainment. A sutra is a thread, most often a thread that holds things together like a mala or a garland. So these are 15 different principles on Kashyap's mala that bind the individual soul to the universal soul. Su means excellent. Tra from Trayate, which takes away. The sutra is that which takes away all obstructions to excellence. For practical purposes, though, a sutra is an abbreviated outline. For example, if one were going to attend a convocation of religiously inclined souls to present a discourse, he probably wouldn't have the time or inclination to write out the entire subject of discourse in proper language to be read to the assembly. But he might like to make a few notes of the major points for discussion so that he could cover all the topics. That outline of major points is a sutra. These would be the main subjects that were to be included in the discourse. In ancient India, there were many great philosophical convocations. In fact, the kings of India would gather together and offer substantial prizes to the sadhus who won the debates. All of the sadhus would gather together and conduct excellent debates of philosophical discourse. A relic of this practice is called the Kumbh Mela, which originally was the grandfather of all the festivals. The Kumbh Mela was the festival of the Kumbh, the container of excellence, the container of consciousness. Kumbh is another name for Ghat, a container, the container of consciousness. And the Kumbh Mela is a convocation which is the container of the excellence of philosophy. You all remember the story of when Dhanvantari came out of the ocean of pure consciousness bearing the Kumbh, the Ghat, the Kailash, which was filled with Amrit, the nectar of immortal bliss. Every 12 years, sadhus came from all over the world to join in discourses, debates, and discussions. The kings would feed all of the participants to gain punya, merit, and they would listen to the discourses. They would also look for the gurus who could advise them on the proper way to administer their affairs. It was an excellent opportunity for prospective disciples to interview their gurus, and generally it was the custom that the winners of the debates would find many disciples from the Kumbh Mela. And thus it offered a wonderful opportunity for gurus and disciples to meet each other. Many of those discourses were given using a sutra, an abbreviated outline of the main topics to be included in the discussion, and many of these sutras were preserved by the disciples of that lineage. Perhaps the best known amongst these are the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which became the basis for what is called Raja Yoga. But there are many other famous sutras. The Kashyapa Sutras are not extremely well known. Kashyapa himself had a very fascinating history. Kashyapa was one of the original Saptarishis, the 7 seers of the divine wisdom or truth. He had 2 wives, Diti and Aditi. Remember, he was given 13 wives. Diti and Aditi and Kadru were the most famous of the 13. Aditi gave birth to the 12 Adityas, or the first 12 gods: Indra, Agni, Mitra, Varuna, Arjaman, Vayu, Shom, Bhag, Pusan, Ashwin, those are the twins, and Boshu and Surya. Those were the 12 sons of Aditi. Remember, we read about the Ashwins in the story of Sukanya and Chavanamuni. They were the ones who created Chavan Prash, the nectar which restores to perfect health. Diti gave birth to all of the other beings of the physical creation, the beings of the earth, as compared with Aditi, who gave birth to the beings of the divine. And of course, Kadru gave birth to the snakes and the beings of the lower worlds. Kashyapa and Aditi took birth together on 3 specific occasions. Actually, there were other occasions too, but there were 3 main times that they took birth together. He was born first as Swayambhuva Manu, while Aditi was born as Satyarupa. And they are similar to the Adam and Eve of the Bible, representing the first human couple of existence. Swayambhuva means he who becomes of his own accord the first man. Satyarupa means the form of true existence, the root of Sat. We are all descendants of Swayambhuva Manu and Satyarupa. They performed a great tapasya to propitiate Lord Vishnu, and finally the Lord came to them and said, "What do you want?" And they answered, "We would like to have a son like you." And Vishnu smilingly replied, "Tatastu, I give you that boon." So, Swayambhuva Manu and Satyarupa took their second birth in the Treta Yuga as Dasarath and Kaushalya, the parents of Lord Ram. In the Dwapara Yuga, Kashyapa and Aditi took their birth as Vasudeva and Devaki, the parents of Lord Krishna. And these were the 3 incarnations of Kashyapa and Aditi, first as Swayambhuva Manu and Satyarupa, second as Dasarath and Kaushalya, and then as Vasudeva and Devaki. Kashyapa is the father of creation, which is called the Kashyapa Srishti, after him. As one of the 7 rishis, Kashyapa was the progenitor of existence. Kashyapa is said to have written these sutras, or at least the realization of these points of philosophy has been ascribed to him. These 15 verses are really excellent topics for discussion, so let's begin our study. Sutra number 1, Prarabdha Janma. Janma means birth. Vashat means bound, dependent upon. Prarabdha Karma, those actions commenced in the past, which are coming to fruition now and in the future. So, birth is dependent upon the Prarabdha Karma. Those actions commenced in the past which are coming to fruition, to fulfillment now and in the future. According to those actions, we take birth. Not only the birth of the body, but the birth of every moment. The circumstances which are evolving in every moment of time are based upon that Prarabdha Karma. There are 4 kinds of karma in existence. Samshipta is the karma which is complete. It's over and done with. It's finished. It is full and complete and perfect. There is nothing more left to be done. Samshipta. Vartman is the present karma. That karma which is going on right now. It is in process. Vartaman. Prarabdha Karma are the actions which were begun in the past and which will come to fruition in the future. As Sankaracharya uses the analogy of the arrow which leaves the bow of the archer. Once the arrow has set forth from the bow, there is nothing that the archer can do to alter its course, but to watch and see where it may land. He has no control over it after it left the bone. And that is what we call Prarabdha Karma. It began in the past, and until it lands, we're still on the hook. We're not free. Every action is an arrow that has already been released. All of us are the actors waiting for our arrows to land. When an arrow lands, if we react, we shoot another arrow. And the arrows continue in rapid succession until we cultivate the spirit of renunciation known as udas. U means circumstance, like all, u, ma. All means creation. U means preservation, circumstance, srishti, sthiti. And ma means Lord. Determination, culmination. So u means the circumstance. And das means the servant. And the servant of udasa literally and philologically means the servant of circumstances. It symbolizes acceptance, freedom from reaction, complete surrender. When one attains udas, the spirit is surrendering, then there is a total acceptance of every circumstance without the shooting of new arrows. We free ourselves from the reactions of desire or revulsion, akarshan and bikarshan, desire, attraction and repulsion. We see all of the Prarabdha Karma that commenced in the past and watch dispassionately as all of those arrows land without firing again. And that's where the fourth kind of karma comes in. The fourth kind of karma is known as nitya karma, eternal karma. Nitya karma actually means yoga. It is complete union. Yoga is defined as chitta, vritti, nirodha. Chitta means the objects of awareness, the objects of consciousness. Vritti means the activities or modifications. Any change, any modification is a vritti. Nirodha means prohibition, cessation, obstruction. When there is a complete cessation of the activities of the objects of consciousness, means they stand still. No vritti, no change, no modification. It stops, still. There is a perfectly still consciousness. And when there is no modification or change, there is yoga, union. Yoga is nitya karma, it's eternal. The activities which are eternal. Chitta vritti nirodha is the perfect stillness of consciousness without activities, modifications, or changes in awareness. Ek granchit. One fully absorbed consciousness. No change, no modification. Traditionally, there are four aspects of yoga. Dhyan, meditation. Jnana, wisdom. Bhakti, devotion. And karma, activity. These four are inseparably connected, but spoken of as four different disciplines so that seekers can intellectually understand the distinctions between them. However, in reality, without devotion, how can we pay attention? Without knowledge, how can we perform effective actions? Without effective action, how can we gain knowledge? And thus the four aspects of yoga are inseparably connected in the path of union and are not different disciplines, but actually are the four components of one path. You need all four. From the moment of conception in the womb, the life of duality begins. That first awareness of individuality comes as a result of Prarabdha Karma, Prarabdha Basat Janma. We have a lot of outstanding debts. We have many arrows that have been shot off into the atmosphere, and we are waiting for them to land. That is Prarabdha Karma. It is for the purpose of perfecting that karma, of fulfilling the destiny that we ourselves have created, that we have all taken birth. And then every moment of our lives takes birth as a consequence of the same Prarabdha Bashat Janma. So every birth takes place because of Prarabdha Karma, the birth of every moment in time, the birth of every circumstance, the birth of every being. It all takes place in the fulfillment of the process of karma, Prarabdha Bashat Janma. Ma says that you can make friends with Prarabdha Karma. If you try to make friends at that time, you will become pure. I'd like to share with you a Mother's Day prayer for the Divine Mother written by Sri Ma in Bengali, which tells us something about making friends with Prarabdha Karma. While the original Bengali is so beautiful, we will try to share it in English. Oh, dearest Divine Mother, we offer our prayer unto you. We are your children. Please accept our plea. Divine Mother, you are the bestower of excellence. You are the well-wisher of the universe, the intrinsic nature of the wisdom of existence. You are the form of the Creator. Please illuminate the universe for us. May we become eternally pure, and may the spirit of purity reside within us. Please be a protector to all. Please cause all behavior to be true. Illuminate this universe with truth. Please destroy all sin and protect us from all evil. Please emanate light in the form of the bodies of gods and goddesses. Please illuminate all souls with wisdom. This is my prayer, Sri Ma. I must confess that it was much more beautiful in the original Bengali. Presumably, all birth takes place in order to finish karma. The birth of every reaction, the birth of every relationship, the birth of every moment, the birth of every body. That is our function, our purpose. We are all bound by unfinished karma. With this knowledge, it behooves us to perform every action as thoroughly and efficiently as possible so we don't have to come back to finish our incomplete work. Bound by unfinished karma is birth, which is the birth of every action, every moment. Knowing that, why leave it half done? Complete the work. To attain freedom from reaction, we must remember that the Prarabdha Karma is the arrow that is coming to land. When it lands and it hits its mark, then we react and send off another arrow. If only we could stop and look where it landed before we start shooting off arrows again. If we must respond, we should give a response designed to free ourselves from further troubles. We should think about what we're going to do. Such discrimination would mean living life perfectly. Our responses should be calculated to take us to a better place than we are already at. Responses designed to accomplish our objectives. If we could just find some way to ask ourselves, what do I want to accomplish before I react? What do I want to get before I respond to this? What would be an appropriate response designed to get what I want? If we could just stop and put one instant of discrimination between the stimulus and the response, then we could live life perfectly. Every being manifested and every moment that comes to birth because of our unfinished business. There is some reason that it comes into manifestation, and the arrows we have shot will land. When the stimulus does come, do we react reflexively? Or do we control ourselves and design a response that will bring us closer to what we want in the furtherance of our goals? Do we know what we want? Or do we react emotionally on transient impulses? When we react emotionally, are we not creating more karma for ourselves, so that once again we condemn ourselves to wait for those new arrows to land? It is evident that the difference between the yogi, the being of union, and the bhogi, the being of selfish enjoyment, is that moment of discrimination which is the interlude between stimulus and response. That's what separates or defines a yogi from a bhogi. Yogis can discriminate and bhogis merely react. There is a moment of recollection, a moment of remembrance in which the yogi asks, what do I want to attain from these circumstances? Before I respond emotionally and get my ego involved in what I perceive to be a stimulus, before I even calculate the appropriate response, I must ask myself, what do I want to get? Only when I know what my objective is can I possibly consider the next question, what action of mine would bring me closer to that goal? There are traditionally 8 limbs of yoga. The first one is called yama, to take control. One takes control in life by defining goals. It is not possible to find a path until we know what the goal is. Without this knowledge, we cannot prevent ourselves from moving in the direction of any other greater force than our own. So we must begin the process of union with a clear definition of the goal. Where am I trying to go? The second step of yoga is called niyama, which means to create a discipline. We must budget our time, budget our resources, budget our mind. How much can we dedicate in the pursuit of each of our goals? Without a clear definition of our goals and the discipline with which to attain them, it is impossible for us to have criteria with which to discriminate which actions will take us closer and which will actually take us farther away. Without criteria for discrimination, all actions become extremely arbitrary. We find no capacity to devote ourselves to the higher disciplines of putting our bodies, our breath, our senses, and ultimately our minds into harmony. The third step of yoga is called asana, putting the body in harmony. Asana literally means to sit quietly and to make oneself present. It does not necessarily mean to twist yourself up like a pretzel. More often, it refers to the practice of putting your body into such a state of harmony and balance that you no longer require to pay attention to it. The body in balance is free from need, and therefore it sits quietly, allowing one to make oneself present. The primary reason for practicing various hatha yoga postures is to train the body to sit still. Mind can never sit still until the body is still. The fourth step of yoga is called pranayama, controlling the breath. The breath is a vehicle by which we rejuvenate the body, and a vehicle out of control is extremely dangerous. Just look over here. By paying attention to the breath, we regulate the length of each cycle of inhalation, retention, and exhalation, and maintain vigilance over the qualities that are energizing our systems. We get to scrutinize the input. There are several formulas for pranayama depending on the purpose. We will discuss some of the more classical means of controlling breath in greater detail later. The fifth step of yoga is called pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the objects of sense. It means to bring your senses inside. We see it out there. And now bring it inside. Close your eyes and see it inside. Stop looking outside. Close all of your senses and look within. Then comes dharana, concentration. Collect all of the different thoughts in the mind and concentrate on one of them. In dharana, there are three: a subject, an object, and a relationship. I love you. There is a lover, a recipient of the love, and the love which binds us together. In dhyana, meditation, the next step in the path of union, there are only two: a subject and an object. The relationship is understood. In meditation, there is an undefinable, intuitive cognition. The love is so intense. I am and you are. There's no way to express it. It is often curious to listen to people speak of meditation practices before they have organized their lives or defined their goals or established their discipline. Most probably there is a confusion between introspection, daydreaming, and meditation. Undoubtedly, the practice and the attainment are described by the same word, but dhyana, as it applies to the path of yoga, refers to the absorption in meditation. Samadhi means completion, accomplishment, the perfection of union. In samadhi, there is only one. So dharana has three, dhyana has two, samadhi has one. I don't believe yogis are free from karma. No one is free from action, not Brahma, not Vishnu, not Shiva. But people can free themselves from attachment to the fruits of their actions. They do that by designing their reactions to situations in their lives so as not to get into any deeper trouble than they are already in. We don't want to make matters worse than they already are. Yogis figure out what they want to attain and how they should go about getting it, and rather than just reacting to every present situation with transient emotion. And two sadhus went off to meditate on a mountain. And as they were climbing, they met some people from the village coming down. The people warned them, "You better be careful up there. There is a ferocious bear who is causing all kinds of havoc." And the sadhu said, "We'll just go anyway. God will protect us." And so they camped out on the side of the hill. That night, they took their food and climbed into their bedding and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, they heard a noise. It's the bear. Both of them turned pale with fright. One of them got an illumination and immediately started putting on his running shoes. The other sadhu looked at him incredulously and said, "Do you think you are actually going to outrun that bear?" The sadhu replied, "No, I really don't. But I have analyzed the situation. I only have to run faster than you. This is an example of discrimination. Ma gives another example. There was once a lady of questionable repute who lived across the street from a temple. A sannyasi who lived in the temple came to that lady one day and said, "You are living a contemptible life. I want to show you the heaps of your sins. For every visitor that comes to see you, I'm going to put down a stone." And he did. He sat on the temple steps and he watched who came in and out of that lady's house. Every time a visitor came, he put a stone there. That woman said, "Oh my God, will you ever forgive me? What else can I do with my life? I don't know any other way to make a living. Look at all of those stones there." Meanwhile, the sannyasi sat in the temple and said, "That damnable woman, look at the heaps of sins that she is piling up." And through the years, they continued this behavior until there was virtually a mountain of stones and sins piled up in front of the temple. The poor woman was totally distraught and constantly in prayer, "Dear Lord, please forgive me, but show me any other way and I will be glad to follow it." One day a carriage came racing down the street, ran over the woman, and she died. All of the citizens proclaimed, "What a relief! All of that sin is gone from our community." It just so happened that the sannyasi died on the same day. They threw the lady's body out beyond the gates where it was torn apart and devoured by dogs. They took the sadhu on a silk stretcher covered with flowers. With a brass band, they marched all around the city and took his body to the burning ghats where they cremated him with sandalwood. His soul went up to heaven and God said, "What are you doing here? You do not belong here." The sannyasi said, "What do you mean I do not belong here? I lived in the temple." And God said, "Oh no, your body lived in the temple, but your mind was constantly across the street with the prostitute. You go to hell. She is coming to heaven. Even though her body was engaged in those irreligious acts, her mind was constantly begging for forgiveness. And therefore, she deserves a place in heaven. You go. Ciao. Bye." And this is another example of discrimination. If you can put your mind into a state of remembrance, and that is a big if, because that is what we are praying for. But if we are blessed with that remembrance, then we can just stop for a moment to plan our lives. Whenever we are confronted with a stimulus, we can just stop for a moment and say, "I will think before I respond." As we cultivate this habit of discrimination, we find that anger, passion, greed, lust, avarice, and ignorance all dissolved into discrimination. Ma speaks in Bengali again, and Swami translates, "Remove the ego and attachment from the performance of all of the activities for which we are responsible. Go to your places of work, go to your schools and offices, and carry yourselves as a great renunciate. Inspire people to act in truth. When they get angry for no reason, ask them very politely what they are trying to accomplish. Do you know what you are trying to get with your anger? Think of what you will will receive for what you are putting out. Is that what you want? Would you want your disciples to follow you? These are very pertinent questions to all of us who happen to be gurus and disciples in every action that we are performed and in every circumstance. The greatest of all things is faith. Every action should be a manifestation of your respect. That would be a better definition of a yogi, not someone who has no karma, but someone who shows respect through every karma. The highest respect is to pay attention. Perfect attention is meditation. In meditation there is no past and there is no future. It is nitya karma, eternal activity. In paying respect, one attains victory over death. Are there any questions?
Swamiji, I have a question, Swamiji.
Yes, please.
When we do puja, path and homa,
Yes.
our body, we can aspire for our body to be still.
Yes.
And so the mind can potentially be still. But when we do other karma, for example, computer work or other garden work, etc., body is moving. So can the mind ever be still then?
Absolutely it can. Because this is Mother's garden, and what a privilege I am given in order to be able to cultivate in her garden. This is Mother's computer, and now what a privilege she gives me to write books about her and for her and to explain her wisdom to the world. What an opportunity to serve in these ways. Will be our constant japa. And if the body is in harmony and the breath is in harmony and the mind is in harmony, we are filled with the attitude of gratitude even while we're acting. What a privilege to paint her door completely. What a privilege to cultivate her garden. What a privilege it is to write her books or to serve her in any way we possibly can. So therefore, we reach to stillness because there is no selfish motivation attached to the action.
Question from Wendy from New Jersey.
Namaste, Wendy ma. Namaste, Sam.
Namaste, Swamiji. On page 12, 4 aspects of yoga are described. Can you please explain why Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga are not included in that list? Thank you.
Wendy ma, Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga are combinations of these activities, of these 4 kinds of yoga. There are only 4 kinds of yoga: Dhyan, Gyan, Bhakti, and Karma. Hatha Yoga is a combination of karma. There's an activity. There's devotion because you're doing it devotedly. There's a knowledge and there's attention present. So Hatha Yoga is a combination of these 4. And Raja Yoga is also a combination of these 4. Every kind of yoga is another equation, another formula of how to integrate these 4 into the activities of our lives. So actually, these are 4 aspects of one yoga. There is only one yoga. And it has 4 component aspects: Dhyan, Gyan, Bhakti, and Karma. And when we integrate these 4, we are performing Raja Yoga, we are in yoga. Our Chitta Vritti has become Nirodha.
Question from Parvati from Sacramento.
Namaste, Parvati ma.
Swamiji, what is the difference between Raja Yoga and Dhyana Yoga?
Raja Yoga is known as a combination of all of these various techniques. The Dhyana Yoga is meditation. And also Dhyan requires all 4 being present, but in Raja Yoga there are other aspects allowed. Raja Yoga, of course, popularized by Patanjali and later expounded by Vivekananda on his sutras on Raja Yoga, is described as the culmination, the apex of all yoga, because whatever we do in life, we do with knowledge. We pay attention. We're doing something and we have devotion to what we're doing. So this is the king of all yogas, is the union of yoga, of all the aspects of yoga. They're not separate paths. I can't have any devotion unless I know what I'm doing. The fact that I love you means that I want to learn about you. The fact that I learn about you means I'm paying attention to you. The fact that I'm paying attention to you means I'm doing something. There's no way to separate them in the practice of spiritual life.
Question from Nanda from San Jose.
Namaste, Nanda Ma.
Namaste Swamiji, Namaste Ma. Can you please explain how we can make friends with Prarabdha Karma?
Yes. First thing we have to do is know what our Prarabdha Karma is. And we can know that by figuring out where we're trying to go and how we're trying to get there. By looking at our goals and what we want to achieve in our future, we can know what our past was about. We can understand the past, because why would we have a tendency to move into that type of future? It's only a continuation. Prarabdha vashat janma. The janma, the birth of every moment, is a continuation, a continuum from the past into the future. Now, once we know what that future is, don't dwell on your Prarabdha. Make friends with it. You make friends with your Prarabdha by busying yourself with Nitya Karma. If you're busy, you're in puja, you're in chandi, you're in pati, you're in homa, you're singing for God, there's a knock on the door, but there's no one home. I'm busy. Sorry. Go away, come again another day. The thoughts come and knock on the door. Swami, open up, pay attention to me. Sorry, thoughts, I'm otherwise engaged. I have a sankalpa to complete this karma. And that's how we make friends with our Prarabdha.
Question from Sadhuma from North Carolina.
Namaste, Sadhuma.
Namaste Shrima and Swamiji, thank you so much for these classes. In the process of discovering our duty or primary goal for this life, can you help us to understand the qualities to look for in that period of discernment? How to distinguish between Prarabdha Karma motivated urges, new desires or reactions, and dharmic impulses that will take us to clearer understanding of our dharmic goal. Thank you, Swamiji.
Sadhuma, it's a priori knowledge. You know intuitively. It's like, did you ever see a headache? You never saw it. You have no demonstrative proof that a headache exists. You can't verify, you can't dissect a human anatomy and say that's a headache. But you feel it. You know it inside. It's the same with being in love. Now when you meet your guru, you know, that's my guru. That's the example I feel inspired to follow. I want to be like that. I know it. It's not something I logically deduce. My heart knows. And once I made that understanding, that commitment, that I defined my life in terms of the examples that I follow. Now let's find, what is my highest dharma? What is the greatest contribution I can make, the most efficient contribution I can make to paying off my debts of karma so that I'm a free individual? How can I free myself from the Prarabdha and make friends with karma? And make myself free from Devarin, the debt I owe the gods, Pitri-rin, the debt I owe the ancestors, and Acharya-rin, the debt I owe my gurus. I discharge the debt to the gods by making a contribution to the world to make this world a better place because of my having been here. I discharge the debt to my ancestors by respecting the elderly the way I will want to be respected when I'm old, and by nurturing the young in the way I want this world to become. And I discharge my debt to the gurus, to the acharyas, to the teachers by living in accordance with the examples that they showed. Now I'm trying and striving for liberation, for moksha. I want to be liberated from all debt. I want to be free from debt. So this type of activity is incumbent upon me. Once I understand that's my goal.
Question from Wendy. In Pratyahara, are we bringing the senses inside and experiencing them there, or are we trying to eliminate the senses completely?
First, Wendy, we'll bring them inside. If you have a vision outside, close your eyes and see the vision inside. And then get deeper and deeper and deeper. The Pratyahara will merge into Dharana. And it'll happen of its own accordance. Don't sit there and say, okay, now Swami told me to think of nothing, so I'm going to sit here and think of nothing. No, not that. Not that. Niti. No, that is not our objective. See the image of divinity outside. Bring her inside and see the same image of divinity inside. And now in Dharana, we take that image of divinity and make her smaller and smaller and smaller and more subtle and let her move right along the circulatory system. So she circulates right through her city. She tours the city of the 9 gates. She is a sensation that's moving. She's energy. I can see her. There she is in my toes. And now she's coming back up from the toes, and she's coming all the way up through the chakras. Let her gather momentum as she raises up the Kundalini. She is the Kundalini, and she's rising higher and higher and higher until she unites with Shiva.
Question from Nanda. In choosing a spiritual goal, how can I pick a goal that is unselfish but not so ambitious that it's difficult to achieve? Thank you for your help and suggestions.
And Nanda, for example, reciting the Chandi Path in one asana. It's an achievable goal. And it's a spiritual goal, and it's not selfish. I want to do this not because I want to go out to the cocktail party and brag and boast and tell everybody that I did the Chandi Path in one asana. No. I want to do this because I want this to be the demonstration of my love for you. This is an opportunity for me to say, I love you. Look at what I'm striving to do, Mother. I'm striving to say I love you by sitting still and be able to recite the Chandi in one asana. That's an example.
Question from Usha from Canada.
Namaste, Ushama.
Swamiji, these sutras are so wonderful. I wonder if this Kashyap could be one of the sages in Sri Ramakrishna's vision of the 7 sages, where a child went up to one of them, woke him up from deep samadhi and said they had come down together.
Very, very, very probable. Those 7 sages were the Saptarishi, and Kashyap is one amongst them. And I'm so glad that I get to share this inspiration with you all, especially people like yourself who understand and appreciate. Namaste.
Swamiji, a question from Jaidev from New Jersey.
Namaste, Jaidev.
Beloved mind, Swamiji, thank you for these wonderful teachings. Your expounding on the Kashyapa Sutra is so helpful. Is this wonderful scripture often taught? I had never heard of it before. You shared it with me. Thank you.
You have to come to the Devi Mandir, Jaidev. It is taught, but it's taught to graduate students. So I'm very pleased that you're in our discussion tonight.
And it is important for you to.
Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste.